Probably want to talk about inclusive mobile experiences today. And you can find me on Twitter, Threads, or wherever the social media is. I'll be there with Perform Segway, which is my username. And yeah, let me give a background why I wanted to speak on this topic. I worked in a lot of companies, consumer focused companies all around the world, and especially with Indian companies that I see is like none of them is really focusing on accessibility or making their apps inclusive to all the users. And this has been a concern that's been nagging for me. And I did a research, and it looks like one of the main reasons is the product or um, the leadership not taking accessibility into account during the software development process, and also yeah, it's just general people ignoring the people who are really in need of accessible softwares. So yeah, let me this talk today is not going to be too technical. It's going to be just a briefing on how you could improve things. I'll leave the technicality to you folks, and we could explore a little on the technical side later. So yeah, jumping on to accessibility in mobile. Like there are few people who we need to cater to. Like One would be people with visual impairments, one would be people with disabilities, one would be people with hearing aids, and one would be the older age people, or kind of any other temporary disability due to some accidents, or any sort of people. So these are the people that we are going to cater to, and these are very sizable number of people, and it's not just when you look at a demographic of users of a particular app, it's a very sizable number. At least I would probably refer to the um, my company's data, which is somewhere around the old age people is like there is a considerable number of older people using Booking.com app. So we want to cater to all the sectors of people and just be socially responsible, developing software that's accessible by all. So yeah, one would be there are a few ways that we need to look into before we start developing a software. One is to cater to hearing people with hearing disabilities. That is through having a proper hints and all the textual capabilities that are available in the app. And for people with visual impairments, we could use reader screen readers, and people with disabilities, we could use switch controls and lots more. And for people with old age, I think even using a large text, accommodating them using a large text is really good enough. So there are lots more, but yeah, one such example I would give for people with old age who they really prefer to use mobile with large text, and most of the apps that in India with large texts are really broken, and um, that's something which we are gonna probably look into. And let's move on to the next. So yeah, let me. I did a small case study on a very popular app in India, which is used by millions and millions of people. I was once working with Paytm earlier, and yeah, we had a very small subset of components that are accessible, but most of the components are really dynamic. And each of the image that's being displayed here when you are using a screen reader or a switch, it doesn't support any of that, and it's only like general people who are using like who are able-bodied, I would say, are able to access the app. So like UPA being like really adopted very largely across India, and we are actually ignoring a lot of people that uh, they need the accessible UPI softwares to make a payment transaction or anything, but we don't provide anything as of now. And yeah, few things are like very poor color contrast, which which is like very hard for older people, and there is no support for voiceover or screen readers, and the user interface is really clumsy, which I would probably say is part of the design process. But yeah, it's like when you use a screen reader, you need to like sort the list of components how you want the customer or the user to travel across your app, and that's something which is missing. And there's a lot of labeling which is missing for the images. Say, for example, there is a carousel of images on the middle which says Paytm Card nearby stores, but it's just visual one, but it doesn't have any accessibility text or hint or whatever actions that needs to be done on that particular component. There's nothing available in the app. So it's really broken. So this is the case for the largest app, like most downloaded app in India, one of the most downloaded app in India. But you could like guess how it's for the other apps as well. So um, so let's move on to the next. What I mean by accessibility versus inclusive design. Uh, for like let's consider people with disabilities. So accessibility is a subset of inclusive design, and it's not just us. For example, even an able-bodied person, say for example, they wanted to use the dark mode. That is also an accessibility. It's because you find using a light mode in your app really difficult, and you want to switch to using a dark mode in your app just because it's easier on your eyes. That is a part of accessible. It's not just some what I would say. It's not a um, it's not like a very big that's something like okay. Let me go ahead with the next. So like I wanted to give a small example on this. What's meant by inclusive design and accessibility. So let's take a, construction road construction of a road. So like if there is just a plain road without any footpaths or anything on the other sides, it's I would say it's not an inclusive road. So inclusive road means it should be inclusive of pedestrians as well as two wheelers as well as the cars. But just having a road, it's not inclusive. You need to build the footwalks, sidewalks, and everything. But what do I mean by accessibility? If you just build a sidewalk, that's not good enough. You need to have the signs. You need to have the like the dotted lines and markings everywhere, so that people with visual impairments, they are able to navigate through the footpath. People with I mean, any general people, they know where to go exactly and which turn they should make. So that is all those signs, all those markings, and everything is like what accessibility and inclusivity is basically building for every one of the people who are able to, who wants to drive on that road or walk on that road or cycle on the road. So that's inclusivity. And I mean, there could be a disabled cyclist, there could be a disabled pedestrian, there could be a disabled car driver as well. So, catering to those type of persons is accessibility, and inclusivity is just just regular ones, building considering to build for every other person. So that's inclusivity. So yeah, there are a few principles when you wanted to like ac- build accessible software. So one is would be perceivable and operable and understandable and robust. So what do I mean by perceivable softwares? So yeah, one would be like we earlier discussed about the um, Paytm's software, the homepage, and over there was images, icons, and everything, but there was no text alternatives for those images. There was no captions for any of the videos or any or text alternative for the icon. So this is something which is a barrier for many people with visual or hearing impairment. So that's something which we wanted to like focus on. Say, I would like to take an example of Twitter in this case, where they would, when you are trying to upload a video or an audio or even for a photo, for example, you would be able to add an assistive text to the image and say what the image really tells you about. And that's something which I would say is like thought from the design process, where the um, design team and everyone came together to build out something that makes easier for people to access. And this is not something which you can find in Instagram, where you wanted to add an assistive image, assistive text for an image and for a reel or something. And that's totally missing. And I would also take an example of Instagram has to be one of the worst accessible apps. So yeah, that's something which I would say perceivable. And also, for if you're playing a video or an audio in Instagram, there is no closed captions available. So for example, people with hearing impairments would be able to they would find it hard to follow along, and they would probably don't know what's going on. So it's essential to build for them as well. Make sure that you have captions and everything enabled for videos, audios, or a- any such kind of media. And let's move on to the operable part. What do I mean by operable? So let's say you implemented all the accessibility suggestions or whatever it is. So um, like yeah, you have a button, and that's some sort of a custom button, but that doesn't, like visually you are able to operate that button, but when you are using a screen reader or a voiceover, that button is not readable by the screen reader, and that button is not operatable with a voiceover or a switch or people with physical disabilities. So yeah. So when you want to build a custom component or something, just make sure that all those components are really operable. So, like when you want, let's take an example of a product that needs to be added to the cart, and you have like a stepper button which says +1 and -1 for the particular product, where you want to add a multiple instances of the same product into the cart. And when you say when you say to the voiceover add one more of this product to the cart, you wanted to make sure that the button understands that text and then operates it. But when you don't provide those functionalities to the button with accessibility actions or something, then that's not the button is totally not operatable, and it's like there is no point of providing just accessibility elements or anything to it. You also want to make sure that it's operatable. And the next would be understandable. So yeah, um, there would be a lot of cases where some error pops up, and yeah, there is no mention of what is actually happening on. It's just a small error code that is understandable for the developers, but not for the uh, consumers or the customers of your app. And being a disabled being a if you wanted to make sure that it's also accessible by people, you also want to provide what needs to be done for the particular error after navigate after the error is dismissed, or do anything. So just make sure that you have like a very understandable or very navigable error messages for people when you're using accessible designs. So that's something. And robust, yeah, it's part of, I would say it's part of the scalability of an app. So more on the engineering bit, like when you build a newer component, the older component breaks the accessibility. You are making sure that all the older components are accessible earlier, but when you build a newer component, the older component is broken and you ignore it. So I would probably say just have an architecture that's scalable, that's maintainable, even for accessibility elements, and not just for general business logic or anything. So also make sure that that happens. So why do you want to use accessibility? How do you propose that to a business leader or a product person, telling that accessibility needs to be implemented? And that's something which many people find it hard. Yeah, one. Let's discuss on the business cases for accessibility. One would be improved adoption. Yeah, earlier I said, even using a dark mode for an app is something I would say is part of accessible feature, and there is a lot of apps that misses the dark mode even right now at the moment. And yeah, once you provide the dark mode for an app, the adoption improves. Once you provide screen readable options or voiceover options for your app, even the adoption improves. So you also wanted to like look into how what's your the customer segment you're operating in. And one such customer segment booking.com operate right now is with like a lot of older people who takes a vacation, like when they want to enjoy something outside. And we also like make sure that all our components are scalable for any size, any content size. So even if they have very largest of the or large text, it's scalable. And even if they wanted to use um, switches, accessibility, any sort of features, we make sure that that is being adopted. So like any people who wants to book for a vacation, any person who wants to book a flight or any such kind of experiences, we make sure that we cater to everyone and we don't ignore anyone. So that's something which really improved the business cases and also the metrics. And yeah, one such that also led to revenue growth. And like improved adoption obviously leads to revenue growth in a lot of places. And yeah, retention, it's because you are able to like differentiate between other folks. Like many of the competitors of a particular product wouldn't have accessible features, and if you implement an accessibility features, you are able to distinguish between them and try to retain more users. And like it's just uh, a way to make the ally people more satisfied. So that's something um, which would differentiate you from the competitors. And yeah, the next would probably be a social responsibility. Yep. If you look at a lot of places, we just ignore a lot of people that just we pass by them. But we totally ignore a lot of things. And I would probably say it's a social responsibility when like you keep complaining the roads are not good, there is no good pedestrian access actions on the road, and it's a part of the civil engineer social responsibility to build such uh, like such buildings that are accessible. And it's also the same case for a developer who's building a software. Make your software accessible to everyone. And and you don't want someone to complain on the software that you build, like saying that I'm not able to use the software. I like it, but I'm not able to use the software. So you don't want to be in that position. So just make sure as a part of your social responsibility, you are building all those capabilities in your app and move on with it. Yep. So if there is some questions, you could shoot it to me. Pause me right away and shoot it to me. But yeah, I'll move on to the features. Let's give a walkthrough on the features that are available in when you are trying to develop an iOS app or an Android app. And one such feature, the most important feature, would be the voiceover feature, where a lot of people are using it. Yeah, it's just that you navigate the entire phone using your voice. And yeah, and the next one would be spoken content. So something if you want the content on your phone to be read across, you start the spoken content, closed captions for videos, closed captions for audios, and switch control. This is something not a lot of people in India really had a access to. But yeah, a switch control is something you have a physical switch and you navigate with the switch up, down, left, and right. It's more or less like a mouse, but just four directions and a tap. So like when you are implementing voiceover, most of the features for switch control would also be covered, but there are some certain APIs that you could use to even more customize the switch control experience. And text sizes from very small to very large screen, very large text. I've seen people using like the smallest size available and the largest of largest size available. So you have to make sure that uh, your app is like scalable across all text sizes. And yeah, magnification, if you want to, like, there are some apps that don't magnify images, so you also want to make sure that you support image magnifications and everything. And yeah, hearing aids, this is something also not a lot of people came across in India. So once I showed, uh, like, when you're using a hearing aid, you just directly connect with your phone with the hearing aid manufacturer, and you'll be able to navigate with your hearing aid, provide better audio quality for your hearing aid, and whatever your doctor recommends it. So it's more customized. The audio is more customized. So just make sure that there are your audio and video content also supports hearing aid. And yep, the last one would be colors. It's a very basic one. There should be not a lot of developer side implementation on it, but like when the design happens, just make sure that you design for dark mode and light mode. And there's more to it, which we'll probably look into the implementation side part. And yeah, so that's these are like the very basic features that you need to build to make your app accessible. But yeah, like, even having one such feature that is built um, over some period of time, not everything together, but one such uh, feature that's being built each and every time some feature goes on across, that would be really easier to, make your app accessible over the longer period of time, and not, do everything at once. Yeah, let's move on to the implementation details. This is also not going to be too detailed. Let me keep it short. So there are a few things that you want to look in. This screenshot is from my iOS IDE, which is Xcode, but yeah, it's more or less the same on Android and iOS part. So one would be accessibility labels. So if you are providing a button or just a label, you want to tell the customer that what is present in the label. Most of the labels, native labels, would probably spell it out whatever inside it. But if you want to customize it, what's being spelled, you could also add a custom label to it. Accessibility hint. This is something uh, like it is not actionable, but it tells the customer or the user to what this particular component does. So it's more or less like a hint. And traits, it's just a general one which tells you like what type of a component this is. It's like a button, image, or a video, or audios, things like that. And yeah, action is, this is a complicated part. Action, there is a lot more to the action bit in when like implementing implementing accessibility for actionable components. Say for example, button. And if you want to make sure that you provide actions for each and every state of the button, and make sure also all the labels, all the hints, and everything is updated for each and every state of the action. And that's something a lot of people forget about, but yeah, that's quite important. And accessibility element, it's like whether you want to group it as a component, or spell it group it individually, so things like that. Your scroll behavior, that is APIs for it, how much you want to scroll. And focus behavior, and that is like when you move a switch or something across a particular component, how do you want to behave. Content sizes, which we already looked at, which is like the text sizes. And speech attributes. So in general, when you provide all these accessibility labels, hints, it tells in a native voice which is programmed in the phone. And but there is a lot of times which could be some error, or the user could improperly understand something, that where a particular statement should have a pause in the right place, but it doesn't have. And you could also like customize how each and every word is spelled out, where there should be a pause, where there should be a where it should be continued together. So things like that. You could enable, like you could add speech attributes to the labels. And quite an important part is that all these labels and everything should be also like, if you're doing for multiple languages, they should be also translatable. So you should translate in multiple languages, not just the labels but also the accessibility, whatever you do for accessibility. So that's something, it's quite important. And yeah, just keep the localization or the translation bit in mind when you do all these things. So yeah, it's because we are not just catering to people with, like looking for accessibility just for English, but also for other languages. Just make sure that you do all those things. And yeah, so you built all those things, but you're not sure how do you test it out. And yeah, Android and iOS provides accessibility inspectors and scanners by default, where you could navigate to a particular component and check the accessibility um, tags for the particular element, which is quite manual. But when you are like wanted to make sure that all those things are perfect in when you're developing, you could use a custom lint rule to make sure that all those buttons, actions, and whatever the accessibility modifiers that you need are provided or are written. So, yep, and there is automated testing. There's a lots and lots of libraries to do automated testing. It would provide you a report on what are the buttons that could be improved, what are the texts that could be improved. So there is a lot more AI-based tools right now too, which should like even make things easier for you, and also like auto format uh, non-accessible components to accessible components. There's lots more to do. So yeah, explore automated testing for accessibility as well. And yeah, and there are lots of user testing groups. One such like booking also, like we speak with some set of group of people and then get an audit from them, and yeah, and improve upon those. So it's like having a direct human connection who would probably test out our app for accessibility and then get back to us. And they have a more perspective, and they are like regular users of the app, who like who would have a keen eye on what actually should be there instead of something else. So yeah, as a developer, sometimes we don't have like a idea on it, but they would probably have a good idea on where things needs to be improved for accessibility. So it's also better to reach out to user testing groups, and there's a lots and lots of user testing groups. You could go there, or you could even like ask them to do it online. So that is all totally fine. And yep, that's all for testing accessibility. There are even lots more tools, but yeah, these are like the four main things that you do. Like three of them are like quite manual, and one would be automated, one would be semi-automated. Yeah, it's all about testing for accessibility. And let me move on to like where do you find like all the guidelines and everything for accessibility? One place would be to find it from Apple Human Interface Guidelines. We are almost at the end of the slide. So yeah, one place would be the Human Interface Guidelines, which is like very extensive. They have guidelines for all the platforms, like even for the special the Vision Pro thingy, that shiny Vision Pro thingy that Apple launched recently. So they have everything for it. It's not just for mobile, but all the platforms across Apple. And even Android, they have a very extensive documentation how to build accessibility elements. And WCAG is like the accessibility guideline for web. You could also like import a lot of things from the WCAG guidelines, especially with translations and how to um, provide all your improve the accessibility tags and translations for accessibility as well. So that's something which WCAG is like well defined. And yeah, you could get to read those all those guidelines. All these are all like if it is a possibility, I will share all these PDFs with you, and you could like listen to it. Yeah, and that's all about it. So if there is any questions, something you would like to ask me, you. Yep. Uh, that's about it. Yeah, there's a lot of questions on it. There's a question from Manya. What is the roadmap for learning Android development? Okay. I would probably say just like start off with the basics. Some course which is online. There's a lot of courses online. You could pick any good rated course, and then yeah. But I would my first suggestion would be just don't stick with like looking at the screen and doing whatever they say. You have to like try to explore on your own. Start like one or two things, one or two chapters is okay, but after the third or fourth chapters, I would probably suggest you to like deep dive, get a hands on yourself, start developing something that you would like. Right now, there's a lots of AI tools for you. Get all the documentation from it, develop it. So yeah, that's something. Um, Bro, your views on no code development. For no code development, I would probably say as long as you build applications for a people and they are able to use it, I'm totally okay with no code app development. But there are a few places where no code app development could not support. Like for example, when I speak with my designer, uh, even I find it hard to like replicate all those design components that they develop. But yeah, no code app development hardly supports any of those components or any of those modifications or any such thing. So I would probably say let's compare it more like a machine made thing and as well as a handmade craft. So it's more of that comparison or analogy, I would say. Yeah, it's like having a no code is more machine made. You would have more standard components and more standard stuff, but if you want more customizations and more stuff, you jump into code and you modify it. So that's how I view it. But as long as you build application that uh, enables people in Coimbatore or people anywhere to do better things, that's okay. uh, exactly from where we should start. Flutter, Kotlin, which framework I would say? Yeah, I probably don't have a lot of idea on Android, but yeah, it's more on I view the code and I work on the code, but it's something I learned professionally during my professional course, but I haven't like started off with Android. But one thing I would probably say, looking at all the market situation right now, is like what the companies use. I would probably say start with Kotlin. Flutter is something uh, I wouldn't be like a very big fan of, like, but you could move on with Kotlin. Kotlin has like very good support, very good community around it, and as well as uh, even Android native is more on a Kotlin, mm, like on a Kotlin platform. So yeah, start off with Kotlin, Jetpack Compose, so things like that. Build on it. You would learn more about it. Yeah, that's for me. Yeah, that's